Well, hello everyone, and welcome to MacDermid Enthone's discussion on DecoKlad paint on chrome system. My name is Robert Collin. I'm the Americas Technical Manager, and I will be the moderator for this event today. The presenter for our DecoKlad paint on chrome system will be Chrissy Polera. She is our Decorative Business Development and Product Manager. Please submit the questions you have as you have them. We will answer all questions within a few days via email. So again, thank you all for taking the time to learn about DecoKlad paint on chrome system. And Chrissy, the session is yours.
Thank you very much, Rob, and thank you everyone for attending today. As Rob indicated, I will be talking to you today about DecoKlad paint, which is MacDermid Enthone's paint on chrome technology. So for this webinar, I'd like to give you some background on paint on chrome and how MacDermid Enthone got involved with paint on chrome, talk a little bit about the process itself and what it entails and how we help our customers become paint on chrome applicators, and then talk a little bit about the OEM specifications and the testing that is required. So there is a long history for paint on chrome as far as MacDermid Enthone is concerned, and something that we've been working on for quite some time. It has essentially been a single source technology at the OEM level. There's really been only one player in this field for the last 5 to 10 years, maybe even more than that. And obviously, that's not desirable at the OEM level. So we want to have other sources, we want to have other technologies, but there were issues with their consistency and performance. So we were approached back in 2007 by FCA, by Chrysler at that point, and were asked if we could help develop a technology to compete in this space, to add another source, to add additional technology, and be able to offer something else to the OEMs. So it was a decoupled project, an educational design project. And really it was twofold. So one, we had to be able to develop a process and prove that it worked. And then secondly, be able to demonstrate that it wasn't just a lab queen process, that it could be implemented at applicators within the US first to start, and then globally. And so that was the challenge that we took on well over 10 years ago. In the process, we have become involved with a small paint supplier here in the United States that has helped us meet the very demanding OEM requirements for paint on chrome. I indicated that we did want this and intend for this to be a global process. So in addition to this US paint supplier, we are currently working with additional suppliers globally to be able to provide this technology across the world. Something else that was really instrumental in us being able to supply a viable paint on chrome technology was the incorporation of an organic coating into our plating process. So initially, when we were talking about paint on chrome, we were really just investigating the paint side of things. How do we optimize the paint? How do we optimize the cleaning before the paint? We really didn't investigate too much as part of the plating process itself. And I would say that changed probably about 5 years ago. We started looking more at the plating process and incorporated an organic coating after the chrome step. And this dramatically improved our consistency, specifically adhesion, and it really opened up our plate to paint window. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But there are some OEMs that have a 12-hour, 24-hour window between the time those parts come off the plating line and when they need to get into paint. As a result of incorporating this organic coating into the process, we've been able to open up that window to as much as 4 weeks or more. So parts can get plated, they can sit for 4 weeks, go into the plating process, and still have exceptional adhesion and pass these OEM specifications, only with the incorporation of this organic coating. I talked about the importance of us being able to incorporate this technology globally and for it to spread around the world. And we're fortunate enough to be able to do that by utilizing our OEM team. We have an OEM manager that sits basically at every OEM headquarters globally. So if we talk about Honda, for example, we have somebody that handles Honda in Japan, as well as somebody that calls on Honda Tech Center and Design here in the US. We have somebody that covers FCA in Detroit as well as in Italy. So you look at this and we're figuring out, and this helps us to figure out, how do we implement these types of technologies and make them globally available? And it is with the addition of our OEM team, the strength of our OEM team, that we are able to do so. I wanted to talk a bit about DecoKlad because DecoKlad is a key portion of our paint on chrome process, of the DecoKlad paint process. And we coupled these together because it really is critical that we are looking to our best applicators, our highest quality and performance applicators, to be able to do this kind of technology. Paint on chrome is not easy. And so we need to make sure that we have operators that are already operating at the highest level and that just add paint to their process. So DecoKlad is a quality performance system within MacDermid Enthone that really allows for global availability of processes, supplying sustainable technologies to the supply chain, and gives us a means of being able to monitor these applicators, report these results, audit them to make sure that they are operating at those highest levels of quality and performance. So it is a licensed program. A DecoKlad applicator receives a DecoKlad license. And in order to become a DecoKlad applicator, there are a few general requirements. One, I indicated there were some audits involved. So the applicator must pass the qualification and initial audits to gain this certification. In order to do so, they must have some type of process control software in place. So we offer a system called MLogic. It is not required that the applicator utilize our system, but they need to have some type of process control software in place in order to be considered for the DecoKlad program. And the other thing that is mandatory is that the plating line has full MacDermid Enthone chemistry. And that's simply because if we're auditing a line and holding an applicator to the highest standards, we need to make sure that we know what these baths are supposed to do, designed to do, and how they run at their optimum levels. And so in order to be able to do that, we need to utilize our chemistry in the plating line. This is an example of what I call the DecoKlad wheel and the other programs that are offered under the DecoKlad umbrella. It is an ISO certified program. Again, I mentioned MLogic, so that is a requirement, but there are other benefits to becoming a DecoKlad applicator, such as MVision, so utilization of plating simulation software, the MacDermid Enthone Academy, which offers specialized training, and other options such as Six Sigma and Tech Expert, which really are helped or designed to help our customers solve high level problems and make sure that they don't keep coming back to haunt them. So this is an example of the DecoKlad program and some of the ancillary pieces that are offered. So DecoKlad paint, as I indicated earlier, is a combination of the DecoKlad plating process and then combined with the final steps of plating and the paint requirements. So we only offer DecoKlad paint technology to our DecoKlad partners. Again, it is important they are already operating at the highest level of quality and performance. But really, when somebody becomes a DecoKlad paint applicator, they are able now to offer the supply chain a complete system. They can provide them with quality chrome finishes, as well as paint on chrome finishes. And what we're seeing at the OEM level lately is that there are OEMs that are mandating for some quotes that customers have paint on chrome capability before they can even quote a job. So if there is an example would be, if there's a buzz model of a Jeep that right now might not incorporate paint, but if they anticipate that within 5 years, there might be paint on that vehicle, any applicator that is going to quote that job has to have paint on chrome capability. So because of that, we are seeing a lot of interest in paint on chrome over the last, I'd say, 18 to 24 months. So DecoKlad paint does fill a very strategic need for our applicators, for the automotive industry overall, and for painters. And this technology is OEM approved. I indicated at the beginning that there was some OEM approvals and some testing, which we'll talk about in detail. But one of the benefits of gaining paint on chrome approval through the DecoKlad paint program with MacDermid Enthone is that it significantly reduces the DOEs that need to be done in some cases. So if I think about one OEM specifically that we have an approval with, if you do not go through that approval process with DecoKlad paint, it is an 18 variable DOE. So pretty extensive. If you are going through the process with DecoKlad paint and utilizing our process as it's laid out, and I will show you that layout in just a moment, but that shortens that DOE variable down to 8. So instead of 18 variables, if I utilize DecoKlad paint, I can only run 8. I only have to run 8 variables for my DOE. So it cuts down a lot on time and gives me a much faster start to production. So this is our process sequence. If we assume here, for example, that this is a plating on plastic process flow, I'd have my pre-treatment and then my copper plating, followed by multi-layer nickel plating with drag out and some rinsing, followed by chrome plating, again, some drag out and rinsing before my organic coating. It's important to point out, and you'll see it a couple of more times stressed in this presentation, this organic coating can be utilized over both trivalent and hexavalent chrome. So it is beneficial for both. It is needed for both from a paint standpoint, but we'll talk about the benefits that it offers in addition to paint adhesion. Following that organic coating, we go through drag out some DI virgin rinses into the dry and off the line. So really nothing special except for being able to add in that organic coating and some rinses to be able to run a paint on chrome process. So as I move into the paint side of things, there are really 3 steps for us to be able to have a successful paint on chrome process. Protecting that finish, that chrome finish, making sure it is clean, and then being able to adhere that paint to that chrome as a result. So how do we do that? If I think about being able to protect that surface first, we have to talk about the chrome. And so one of the issues, the biggest issue that we've had in the supply chain with consistency has been related to adhesion. And a lot of that is because as these parts sit, whether they're hexavalent or trivalent chrome, they form some passive surface films on the chrome. The more films that form, the more difficult it is for paint or any other coating really to adhere to that chrome. So those start to form within hours, trivalent chrome a little bit longer over a period of days, but still we know that those films are forming, those oxide layers are building up on the surface. And so that has been the reason for the OEMs to specify a very tight plate to paint window, 12 to 24 hours after electroplating, those parts need to be painted. If we incorporate, or if an applicator incorporates the DecoKlad paint technology into their system, I can go 30 days or more between plating those parts and having to paint them. So significant increase, obviously, in that plate to paint window. And that's a direct result of adding in the DecoPass OC process, that organic coating step. And so what happens in this instance is that I'm electrolytically depositing this organic polymer over the chrome surface, immediately following the chrome plating step. So I go into my chrome plate, I rinse, and I go directly into my organic polymer, that organic coating. And what this chrome polymer does is it bonds to the surface and basically reduces the amount of atoms that are able to form that passive layer, that are able to form those oxides. That passive chrome, those oxides are what contributes to paint adhesion failures. So if I'm bonding to them and reducing the amount of them on the surface, I'm significantly increasing the adhesion of that surface, of the paint to that chrome. And so that's one of the main functions of the DecoPass OC process. Something else that this polymer is able to do is develop a high surface energy on that surface, which is very suitable for applying paint. It also allows for a very easy to clean surface, which is important. It's important for it to be clean, no debris. We'll talk about how important cleaning is in the paint side of things as well. But the DecoPass OC process really is the beginning of that cleaning step to make sure that we have a clean, fully wetted out part prior to painting. The process also improves our corrosion protection, and it allows for no change in color, gloss, or appearance. And this is critical because if I think about an applicator that is going to implement this process into the plating line, right now they're probably saying to themselves, if I am running 5%, I'm going to change my entire plating process to go through this step, and I can do that. So I don't want to just run 5% of my work through this process. I can run everything through there without making major changes and not have any change to my color or gloss. So there's a benefit. And I can also boost the corrosion protection of the rest of the work that is coming off the line. So I don't have to make changes just for 5% of the work. I can easily do it for everything and have benefits and no drawbacks at all. So protecting it, after we protect it, we need to make sure it is even more clean. And we do this by requiring a power wash at the beginning of that paint process. So we've done a lot of testing with power wash systems, and we've seen extreme benefits in being able to eliminate surface contaminations like dust or fingerprinting by incorporating an acid wash prior to paint. A typical cycle would look something like this. So a pre-wash or a pre-rinse, followed by an acid wash, another rinse with a rinse aid incorporated, a virgin DI rinse, dry, and then a de-static to make sure no further contamination is added to that process before paint. So again, another critical step here, power washing, to ensure those parts are as clean as possible prior to paint. And then the last step, obviously, is adhering, and the paint is obviously a critical part of that. Not every paint and every paint applicator is suitable for the DecoKlad paint program. And I can tell you this because I have screened, MacDermid Enthone has screened many, upwards of 8, in order to see if they had products that were suitable for this application. And so it is very important to find the right primers and top coats. Again, we do have right now approved primers and top coats for this system specifically. We are working with more paint applicators to expand those offerings, not only within the US, but globally. And so the finishes that we have now, the primers and top coat system that are currently approved, right now, robotic Beller spray applications, they have a short flash time in between each coat. We do have required dry film thickness measurements for both the primer and the top coat. And those are in line with the OEM or ASTM specifications that are set forth from the supply chain. But we've seen with the primers and top coats that we do have approved, we are able to achieve exceptional thermal shock, environmental or humidity performance, Stone chip impingement, the gravelometer, discussed quite frequently. Another big part of paint on chrome testing is weathering, both artificial and natural weathering, and these systems meet those specifications as well. So there's a lot that is involved for the paint process, the paint on chrome process, to be successful. So this is a general overview of what the process looks like, and then I'm going to get into each section in a little bit more detail. But just as a recap, we talked about that DecoKlad plating system. So your coppers, your nickels, you go into the chrome plate, again, can be trivalent or hexavalent, rinsing, and then into that DecoPass OC, my organic coating that preps that surface, reduces the oxides that form, rinse, dry, and transfer to paint, where I get power washed again to further clean that surface, go into primer and top coat, and oven cure. So let's break this down in a little bit more detail. Talked about the DecoKlad plating system. Again, absolutely a requirement to become a DecoKlad paint applicator. The plater would go through a full audit process. Parts would be tested to make sure that they meet these requirements. Again, both applicable for both hexavalent and trivalent chromium. As with any OEM specification, the minimum thickness requirement in this layer must be met. And then the critical rinsing steps following this. This is the beginning of making sure that those parts are as clean as they possibly can be before getting into that paint chamber. So we need to make sure there's no residual chrome. We need to make sure that we're starting that process of getting that surface fully wetted out. If we have both hexavalent and trivalent in the same line, and in some cases we do, we would want to have dedicated rinsing for each immediately following. So probably a drag out and a rinse, and then they can be combined if necessary. I know that there are not platers that have 20, 30 extra tanks laying around. So obviously the more that we can combine these steps, the better. And that's always in the back of our minds when implementing processes. So it's important that these parts are clean and that there's no cross-contamination, but we are able to combine some of these steps as we get forward into the DecoPass OC. This is our organic coating, so this would need to be added to the process line if it was not implemented already. So if a customer or an applicator is not currently utilizing a post-dip or a passivation step, this would need to be figured out how to incorporate this tank, which is just a standard electroplating tank, rectifiers, heaters, filtration, agitation, and the subsequent rinses into the plating line. DecoPass OC does not have a very long process time. It's in that tank for less than 90 seconds, but it has to be in line. I cannot pull parts off the chrome line, let them sit, and then go back into DecoPass OC. It needs to be done immediately following chrome, rinsing, and into that process. Following the DecoPass OC, we have some rinsing and drying, and this is critical. We need to maintain that surface wettability. We need to make sure it wets out fully. We have some drag out and very clean virgin DI sprays after that process, and then it is oven dried and transferred to paint. When it gets into painting, and now you see blue. So red was all my plating processes. Blue is now the paint side of the DecoKlad paint process. And this is where I begin my power wash. So further making sure that this process or this surface is clean, that mildly acidic power wash system, removing contamination such as fingerprint, dirt, and debris, continues to wet out that surface. Then I get into my actual painting steps of primer and top coat, both robotically sprayed. A bell or a fan electrostatic spray system is utilized. And these are multi-layer builds with short flash times in between coatings. So an example of what your DFT would be for the primer is about 0.3 mils. You could expect about a 1.5 mil dry film thickness for your top coat. And then those parts are oven cured. Time and temperature can vary depending on what the OEM requirement is and what the approval is. And these are typically part of your DOE variables. When you're trying to achieve those OEM approvals, these are typically the things that you'll utilize to establish your upper and lower control limits for the process. So different oven cure times, different oven cure temperatures, a range of dry film thickness for both your primer and your top coat as examples. So we do currently have OEM approvals in the US with our DecoKlad paint process. We have an approval to MS 90119 for FCA and to GMW 17206 and 17889 with GM. And we have, so the technology is approved. We also have applicators in the US that are approved at these OEMs as well. You know, as I indicated at the beginning, that was one of the mandates from FCA to vet the technology and then to prove that applicators could actually run it in a production environment. And we've been successful in doing that. There's a lot of testing that comes along with getting these OEM approvals. And if you're familiar with paint, you're familiar with the extensive testing. I mentioned some of it, so humidity, weathering, gravelometer, but I'll go through some of them here that we've done and worked with our applicators on performing to gain these approvals at both the technology and applicator levels. So appearance matching, so obviously that finish needs to match the requirement from the design team. There can't be any windowing around the edges. We have to have the required color and gloss levels set out by the OEMs. Adhesion crosshatch, so there can't be any coating removed on a specific tape test. We have to meet thickness requirements, again, set out by the OEM. Water resistance, so soaking at a specific temperature for 24 hours, followed by the ISO 2409 tape test, and meeting that requirement without any blistering or removal. Weathering, so there's artificial weathering, which is xenon testing, performed at both 2,500 and 4,500 kilojoules. And these are combined with tape test for adhesion. We look at gloss retention. We're looking at combining it with humidity, gravelometer, gravel resistance. So very stringent test performance that these coatings need to meet in order to pass. And then these are not taken lightly by any stretch. And so all of these finishes that have been approved have met these artificial weathering requirements. Natural weathering, so Florida weathering, and we're still in the process of doing that because it is such a long cycle, 48 months, so 4 years in Florida weathering, and still not showing any signs of cracking or blistering, no adhesion loss, tape test, gloss retention. These are all things that are continuing to be monitored as these finishes are gaining approval. Humidity, so to ASTM D1735, 500 hours in that test, showing no loss of adhesion and no blistering, and then followed by ISO 2409 and post-humidity testing. So, you know, tape tested at different segments, time segments, post-humidity testing, and still not showing any signs of loss or blistering, adhesion loss or blistering. Some chemical resistance testing or general resistance, so fuel and fluid resistance, acid spot resistance, and again, these are all called out specifically depending on the OEM specification. There are some different solvents that are tested for, Croc-Mar, fingerprint cleanability. Each OEM has specific tests and requirements for these types of resistance. Gravelometer or gravel resistance testing or impingement, zone impingement, both hot and cold panels, certain chip sizes, some with and without humidity, a certain number of chips that are essentially thrown at the surface of these parts to see how they withstand the impingement. So there are a lot of tests that are performed. Thermal cycle, and the thermal cycle and thermal shock really have were our go no-goes. So this is what we use to screen the efficacy of a paint supplier or a specific paint from a supplier, to screen the or to tighten the window of our DecoPass OC process, for example. Thermal cycle and thermal shock are probably the best way to determine if you have a viable paint on chrome process. It is not easy to withstand, 10 to 20 cycles, again, depending on the OEM specification, and then going through, water and with no blistering, or, sometimes these finishes would just shear right off the surface. So very stringent tests for thermal cycle and thermal shock when it comes to meeting these OEM requirements. And we've been able to do that successfully. So DecoPass OC, again, as I indicated, is a critical step in this process. The high surface energy of this coating allows us to keep the coating clean, that finish clean, while reducing the amount of passive chrome or oxide layers that are on there to negatively impact the adhesion of the paint to the chrome. Again, we need to make sure that we have the tanks to do so, but once we do, there's really no specific other requirements for a process. It's just like any standard electroplating tank. Short process time, again, of less than 90 seconds. And again, the DecoKlad license is required to become a paint on chrome applicator through MacDermid Enthone. And that just is a series of audits and checks that we do just to ensure that our applicators, and many of them are already doing these things, so it's very simple to go in there and audit, our applicators that are already running at the highest levels of quality and performance. And then just making sure, again, that they have quality control software in place, they're utilizing all of our chemistry, they pass the line audits, and those parts that are tested to OEM specifications. So thank you again very much for your time today. I hope you learned a lot more about paint on chrome. If you do have any questions, I please urge you to send me an email, and please stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Chrissy, thank you. It was a great session today on DecoKlad paint on chrome system that we offer. For all of you that have been asking questions, we will be getting back to you via email to answer those. And again, thank you all. Stay safe out there and enjoy your day.